Welcome to a brand new show of Section 114 Sports or 114 Sports. My name is Harry. This is powered or presented by San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. With this show here, it's geared more for non San Antonio FC, non San Antonio soccer like high schools. Like today, we're going to be um, talking about RGV, the rise and unfortunately the fall, or what I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I think with RGV, there's a lot of good, there was some bad, and in my opinion, and I'm sure Edson will be able to kind of agree or disagree. There was an ugly part that uh, how it ended, for RGV without getting too much into the weeds. But Edson, formerly of Down in the Valley, or I know you're not covering the team, but any chance of resurrection of Down in the Valley, or
Unfortunately, no. It was a hard decision that I had to make, but I felt like it was the correct decision. I mean, Down in the Valley had started from the beginning, uh, related to RGVFC ever since it was a 15-minute segment for the Peel. And honestly, like I felt like my time was up when it came to like soccer podcasting.
Mhm.
I started getting into sim racing, just as a hobby, just for fun. Like I had told the guys, my audience at Down in the Valley, this past season had gotten to the point where I wasn't enjoying, doing the
Right.
podcast because of the added stress of information that was off the record that I couldn't say, pretty much stuff that was kind of going on through in the background that I even right now I'm still not at a liberty to kind of explain fully what's going on. And knowing all of this stuff, it stresses you out, right? Because the added stress, like you want to tell like the fans exactly what's going on, but you do have that duty that if somebody tells you, hey, I don't want this to go out in public, you have the journalistic integrity, you have to have it to respect their wishes, and keep it to yourself. So no, unfortunately, I mean, I try to help as much as I can in other things. I know I had pitch to the USL show to kind of help them do a little bit of like shorts for YouTube and all of that. Um, but I think quote unquote full time podcaster. I think that's it for me. But I don't know if it's going to happen in the future. A lot of people had asked me like, am I going to do Dynamo stuff again? Um, I want to see how it goes, but for now, I think Down in the Valley as an entity is kind of dead and buried.
And so, and I know you talk about the sim racing. Uh, Edson and Jacob both have moved on to iRacing. I know you guys do the Vigilante Racing League for it, which is typically Wednesdays, if my memory serves me correct, on YouTube for
Yes.
that. And I have it saved in my YouTube favorites as follow it. I'll put that in the show notes here. But if you do have Wednesday night, you don't really have anything going on, and there is a race. I think they're pretty consistent. I know this week they mentioned that this is the final race of the off season, I guess you could kind of say. And then next week, of course, because NASCAR comes back full time with the Daytona 500 on the 18th, you guys will be starting. And if I understand everything correctly, you guys are going to kind of mirror the NASCAR season. So that should be kind of cool to see you and Jacob and Edson with his painted cars is a favorite, I guess you could kind of say. For that here, the HEB, the Whataburger cars.
Yeah, so currently I drive the Mente Futbolera number 8 car.
The
I,
Ocho.
I yeah, the Ocho machine as I have been baptized by the guys at AAA Broadcasting. I'm and Jacob, he ran the 17 in this season 7. He has confirmed he will be changing to the 77, his favorite number, going into season 8. So if you guys do go and watch the broadcast, be sure to put in the chat and cheer on the 8 and the 77 trucks.
So it's about the only thing I support from the RGV Valley.
There it is, everybody.
Hey, there's going to be a few digs, not a lot, but through here. So to kind of get started, it starts 2015, I believe, is when first announced March of 2015. Houston Dynamo partnering with the D League franchise to form a USL team for 2016. I love this comment here. Houston President Chris Canady was an onlooker as members of the club's academy and first team reserve got on the field for a much needed time in scrimmage with NASL club San Antonio Scorpions. So flashback to both San Antonio and RGV and Houston relationship for that here. So what was unique about this is Houston and RGV was the first to do what was called a hybrid, where RGV controlled the marketing aspect. They were actually a owner of it, but the Dynamo controlled the roster decisions.
Correct.
And at the time, to be honest with you, I thought it was a brilliant way to expand the footprint of USL. I won't lie to you, where you could have it kind of as an independent team, but still have guidance under an MLS team for that here to bring in players. Little did I know that RGV would not be able to play in the Open Cup, which I think was, if memory serves me correct, was directly related to Houston Dynamo not wanting its players to play in the Open Cup under the badge of RGV, and still wanted to be able to call them up to the Dynamo, if my memory serves me correct. So that was kind of a change and kind of a shock, I think, for kind of the first blow to RGV fans was, hey, yes, you have a team, but you're not going to be able to participate in the Open Cup. But just kind of talking that first year, that the relationship between Houston and RGV and the excitement that generated, because I believe at the time you were up in Houston at that time.
No.
You were still.
I was still in my final 2 years in college at UTRGV, and so when the team was announced, I wasn't very nervous, because we had gotten in the Rio Grande Valley, we had gotten other attempts of it wasn't even professional soccer, because it was back in the USL Development League, the PDL. And you had the RGV Bravos, which lasted, I want to say, 2 years. The RGV Grandes, which only lasted a season, and they were both in the PDL. 2 different ownership groups that really didn't pan out. I believe with the Grandes, it was more of trying to give college players an opportunity, to play. The Bravos was a little bit more of a serious project in the first year. And then all of a sudden, because they first played in Hidalgo, Texas, in the Hidalgo Valley View High School stadium. That's where they played in the first year. They had a really, really good attendance for PDL standards. I was actually I became a member of their supporter group, La Raza Brava. Met some really good friends there, which I'm still friends with till this day. Huge shout out to Jesus Cantupasi. He was actually the president of the supporters groups of La Raza Brava. But then all of a sudden they announced, oh yeah, we're moving the team to Brownsville. and there were a lot of rumors, which I'm really not going to address, because like I said, it's just like hearsay, and speculation about why exactly they moved immediately, all of a sudden from Hidalgo to Brownsville. But from getting a couple thousand of people in attendance on average, I think they only mustered maybe at most 200 in Brownsville,
Mm.
and then they folded. In the Grandes, they played in Edinburgh, but this time they played at the Edinburgh Roadrunners Stadium, which is a baseball stadium. Like I said, it only lasted a year. So when the Toros were announced, I was a little bit skeptical about how long this team was going to last, considering the last two teams that had come in and not really lasted very, very long. The difference was, and that kind of got me a little bit more calm about it, was that there was going to be an affiliation with the Houston Dynamo, which was my favorite, and it still is my favorite MLS team, right? Also, the fact that they were going to try to continue the, I want to say tried and true way of running the team. They're going to try to emulate what they're doing, what Alonso Cantu had been doing and continues to do with the RGV Vipers and the Houston Rockets, which was this hybrid affiliation where Alonso Cantu owns the Vipers, runs the business operations of it, but the Houston Rockets are the one that handle all the technical aspects of the team. So they were going to try to emulate that with the Houston Dynamo and RGVFC, right? And so that was, so leading up to the first season, there was a lot of hype to it because, we were finally going to have not a development team. In theory, was going to be a professional level team. At that time, USL was D3, but it's still professional in certain aspects. There were plans. There was an ambitious project. There were plans about the stadium being built at the former Super Splash place, or
Location.
the location. When I was talking to some front office members, because I wanted to become a season ticket member, and but I kind of asked about tickets and all that. They had the ambition of moving up to MLS in 5 years. The whole, from what I was told is that HEB Park, the way it was built, it was built with room for expansion if needed, to one day go to MLS. Right. So there was an ambitious project. Obviously, the Alonso Cantu, you have, the richest man in the Rio Grande Valley backing up, this team. So there was a lot of good intentions on it. And the fans were kind of the ones that didn't know about it, they had good ambitions of it. The team gets announced. Wilmer Cabrera gets announced as the head coach. And one of the things they always drill down on us is that with this hybrid affiliation, they were still going to, their ambition was for RGV to be able to compete and win for championships. And in that first season in 2016, this team was built with basically, the three different levels. You have your young academy players, you have your veteran, your USL veterans, and you got obviously your talented players from the Houston Dynamo, whether some French starters from the first team, the Dynamo first team, or anything like that. So you had a good combination of that really brought in arguably the best season in the history of Rio Grande Valley under Wilmer Cabrera. I mean, this team had broken records for least amount of goals being scored on in the regular season. They ended up second place in the Western Conference in that season. Evidently, eventually they lost in the playoffs to OKC Energy. I was there at that game. And this was heartbreaking, but leading up to that game, it started to show the signs that the Houston Dynamo's interests were not at all with RGV. And the reason I say that was that leading up to that game, they called up Callie, I want to say it was Callie Brown, who was the goalkeeper, the starting goalkeeper throughout the season for RGVFC. They called him up to the first team just to train, to train with the first team. When the game was when the game happened, come game day, he wasn't started. He wasn't started, and the justification was that because Callie Brown did not practice with the Toros during the week, they decided to go with the second string goalkeeper for that night. And unfortunately, when you've built up chemistry within your defenders and a certain goalkeeper, you change the goalkeeper to somebody with completely different characteristics, it's going to affect you. And in the end, in the last couple of minutes, OKC Energy, went, I believe they were like 2-1 down, and they ended up winning 3-2 in the last couple of minutes. It was just heartbreaking. But you kind of started getting that idea that, yeah, it's like at the end of the day, the Houston Dynamo, what they're going to care off first and foremost is going to be the Houston Dynamo. Everything RGV related is going to be second.
Yeah, so just kind of a quick recap on that. Ruben Luna opened the goal scoring in the 33rd minute. Kalen Ryden, who now plays for New Mexico United, equalized in the 72nd minute. San Antonio non-favorite Eric Bird scored in the 76th minute. And then Colin Bonner scores 2 goals, 90+2 and 90+3 for the Energy to come back and win it. And it was it was a crazy ending. And, as a San Antonio FC fan, we laughed a little bit because, let's be honest, RGV owned us that year for that year. But, it's to me, kind of moving from the first year to the second year. And I think that's when you really saw even more the transition away from what, in my opinion, what was promised for, that Houston Dynamo was gonna do for RGV. And that was some of the key players weren't brought back. Some were promoted up and then, moved on to other teams. Others just weren't re-signed. And to me, that became the circle of life for RGV under Houston. Is they would develop, players, and they wouldn't be restocked. It wouldn't be reloaded of the same quality. And I think to me, that's where the relationship between RGV and, and Houston Dynamo went south. Is you've got RGV ownership saying, "Hey, come out, come support us. We are a professional team. The product's going to be good." But you had the inconsistencies with the rosters, the inconsistencies just with the communication. If my memory is right from you, from the Dynamo to RGV on player status, and I think to me it impacted how RGV could have built on that first year, because the first year they played at the they started at the track and field stadium of UTRGV.
Correct.
And then they went to the practice facility, which is where HEB Park was being built at. It wasn't fully available until the start of 2017 for that year. So, but you had a lot of momentum. Like I remember we went to the last game, me and AJ, last game where if San Antonio would have won, we would have made the playoffs. RGV knocked us out, and it was a fun environment. You had the Stampede on the south end of the field. You had the one side of the stands. There was a lot of banter going around, a lot of fun stuff. And, to me, at the end of that night, you're like, dude, RGV's got something special. And, I'll let you kind of explain the next, 5 years, I think was that you guys were under the relationship with the Dynamo. Kind of talk about, the promise, and then how that transition to what, December of 2021 or 2020? Yeah, 2020. February 2020. Um, where you guys got your independence, and then there is one thing that we'll have to ask on: was going independent really the right thing for RGV ownership? Because I think for the fans it was, but for the RGV ownership, was it the right thing? But kind of talk about the history under the Dynamo a little bit more.
Yeah, so after the 2020, after the 2016 season, which was arguably, it was very successful, first year team going into the playoffs, you would think that logically you were going to maintain a foundation off of that winning team and build it up with some key pieces that can get you farther into the playoffs, and that is not what happened. So what happened is that I want to say, it wasn't Owen Coyle. I'm trying to remember who the Dynamo head coach was at that time. So he gets sacked, and so logically, Wilmer Cabrera, because he had done such a good job in the USL with the Toros, he gets promoted to be the Houston Dynamo first team starting the 2017 season. And then they ended up bringing Junior Gonzalez as the head coach for RGVFC. So you start off with a coaching change. And I believe Junior Gonzalez.
Yeah, it was Owen Coyle. Wade Barrett was the interim, and then Wilmer came in October of 2016. Yes,
correct. Yeah, so that was after the Toro season ended. So, and then you bring in Junior Gonzalez, who I believe was coming in from either Sounders 2 or LA Galaxy 2. So he was a developmental coach, not a competitive coach, right? So they promote Charlie Ward, Eric Bird, George Malky, and other multiple players from the Houston Dynamo first team. Yeah, the core of this team. I believe Ruben Luna, I think he lasted 1 year before he retired and went into becoming a realtor. Zenon Katic, who was also a good striker for us in 2016, I believe also retired. But so yeah, most of the core got moved up into the Dynamo first team. And so you were replacing these players with players that were coming out of college and didn't necessarily, go into the MLS draft. So, when now instead of having that balance of veterans, talented players, and young players, now you were filling up this team with mostly young players where you didn't really have, an idea of how good they could be. This is where you started seeing players like Connor Donovan, Kyle Adams. You had Emilio came in 2016, but you started seeing all these younger players. Kyle Murphy as well. These were players that okay, are they gonna pan out? And things like that. So there was a lot more questions than answers. And in the end, in 2017, obviously the performance, decreased dramatically. They didn't make it. They didn't qualify into the playoffs. And the thing that irked me was that every week the press would always ask, Junior Gonzalez about the team. And he's like, oh, we're on the right track. We're doing well. When the team was losing. Right. So one of the anecdotes that I have because in 2017, that's when I moved to Houston. I became, I joined with the guys, Justin and Josh with the Peel, kind of took over down in the Valley. At first, RGV didn't really grant me, they didn't grant me media credentials. But thankfully, Sean Ringross helped me with that. He called his contacts with the Houston Dynamo and was able to get RGV to get me a credential. But I remember after that 2017 season, when the 2018 preseason was starting, so almost every year the Houston Dynamo would travel to RGV and hold their preseason there for a week, I believe, and then they would actually play the Toros at the end. I think on the last day of their preseason in the Rio Grande Valley. So obviously, after the game, after that scrimmage against the Toros, the press were asking questions to Wilmer Cabrera, right? And he's all like, "Oh, happy! Oh, yeah, I'm really happy. With the Houston Dynamo, we've got there's a lot of good things. I'm really looking forward, to building up from 2017. Because if you remember, in 2017, the Dynamo made it into the Western Conference Final. And so it was my turn to ask a question. And I asked the question, Wilmer, in regards, to the failure of RGV, to make it to the playoffs, since you are the Houston Dynamo, first team coach, which handles, the technical aspects of RGVFC, what kind of changes are you going to establish to make sure that the Toros get back into the correct path? His change, literally, after I asked the question, changed from happiness to anger. He was like, and he just looks at me and he says, "What kind of failure? We just signed 5 players from the Toros to the Dynamo first team. That's not a failure in my eyes." I was like, okay. But it goes to show, that their point of view, or their vision was not what they would tell the fans of, "Oh, we're going to make this a competitive team." No, this team was built just to, feed players into the Dynamo system. And I know, man, I forgot his name. That's how much I hate him. Matt Jordan. Matt Jordan, multiple times, he would always go on with Glenn Davis in Soccer Matters.
Great show, by the way.
Yes, by the way, highly recommended. So there were multiple times where Glenn Davis would ask, Matt Jordan about what was going on with RGV, like, what is the idea of it, like, how is it working? And so basically, I remember one time Matt Jordan was talking about the 3 buckets or something like that. But basically, the idea is that players that were signed to play at RGV had a limit of 2 years to prove that they were good enough to be signed for the Dynamo first team. And if they did not live up to that expectation, even if they were good at the USL level, they would not get re-signed and they would walk away for free. So we lost players like Connor Donovan, who is now with Sacramento Republic, Cal Adams, who is now with Louisville City, Cal Murphy, who had just recently retired, but he was arguably one of the best strikers in the USL Championship level with Miami FC, with Memphis 901. You guys had him for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
We didn't play him, but yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of the great mysteries of San Antonio. But
yeah.
But like Chuy Enriquez, your buddy,
Yes.
for that here. You can go through the history of the players, and to me, that's what the disappointing factor is. And like, I know as a San Antonio fan, we joke about the empty seats, but that first year, 2017, they reported an attendance of over 7,000. The following year, it dropped down to 46. In 2019, it dropped down to 38. And to be honest with you, it never recovered from there. But to me, that's my biggest frustration. Well, there's two sides of it here. From the Dynamo aspect, I understand, you're trying to do like the next pro right now where, hey, you got a 2 or 3 window and then they age out. I understand that. But this wasn't what was explained or, promised or what was discussed publicly to the fans of RGV. And to be honest, to, USL in general. So you had to me, the rotation factor of the players. To me, I'm going to turn this around on the other side to Cantu in the business side. And this goes for their entire history, including the end. If you compare the coverage of the G League. What is their basketball team called?
The Vipers.
The Vipers. If you compare the coverage that the social media puts out, because it's the same social media does for the Vipers compared to what they did for the Toros, your own ownership, in my opinion, had them second rate. Not even equal, but second rate. And
Correct.
I think that was, yeah, you had the Viper dancers out there. Game day was awesome. Even prior to last year, I think, they did a great job game day. But it was getting people to come in, getting people, and we won't get into the details of it, but I know just in discussion with you in the past, getting people to sign up for season tickets and making it worth it. Because,
Yes.
there was a lot of times, especially early on, people would sign up for it saying, hey, it's a great value, only to see the walk-in crowd get a greater value from buying tickets through there, along those lines. And to me, that was a huge disservice, to on the business side of the Dynamo, or probably not of the Dynamo, but of
RGV.
RGV.
So like for example, like my parents in 2017, they bought season tickets for the Toros, and you know how diehard my dad was
He's
for the
still
Toros,
he's an
and he's
awesome
still,
dude, by the way.
yeah. The problem was that there was really nothing extra to it, because one of the things I remember, one of the things they told me, oh, for season ticket members, parking is going to be free. So they were thinking of charging parking, on a game by game basis. In the end, they decided, okay, free parking for everybody. So there's one is the plus that disappeared. They were talking about, season ticket member only events, which very, very few of, if any. I don't recall
They
exactly,
had a
but
couple. I think they had a couple
they had a
early.
couple, but yeah. So at the end of the day, my parents decided not to renew because they didn't really see the value of getting complete season tickets. Considering my dad, excuse me, my dad is out for 2 weeks at a time, and he couldn't really sell those tickets, to somebody else. It's like they saw that, what, it's better. It's a better value for us to just buy, tickets on a game by game basis. And there was a lot of fans all these years that would tell me the same thing. I don't see value in buying season tickets, you know. And
Well, it's
so
the promotions that came with it, though. It was the discounted tickets, but it was the promotions, the little gifts, the little incentives that they would get people to do to be able to do it. And it's something, we've talked about San Antonio FC, we talked about Austin Bold, El Paso, even, as far as for Copa Teos teams.
Mhm.
But that was the big thing for there. But, as far as it was just frustrating listening to you, because for the first couple of years it was just you, and then you brought Jacob on, and it was just, and going back when it was just you by yourself on down the valley, and then on the pill with you and the guys from the pill, is the value that RGV did not provide to its season ticket members. It didn't value them.
Mhm.
I want to ask you this question because I do want to move on to kind of the independents, and then we'll kind of get into the records, and then we'll kind of go, best and worst stuff.
Mhm.
Moving. So I think for the fans, going independents was always the right answer. But
All right.
for, you think if Camp 2 had to do it over, you think he would have gone independent, or you think he would have stayed and possibly, and I know hindsight's 2020. I could see him moving, if he had the options, staying with the Dynamo, knowing that within a couple of years, you could have went to MLS Next Pro with North Texas, still been under there along those lines here. I think it would have hurt the fan base, but I think the expenses being lower, and from my understanding in MLS Next Pro, it is a quote unquote D3 league, which was the league that originally RGV and San Antonio FC went into. Was originally a D3 league, got promoted to D2 because that's how we do things here in the United
Mhm.
States. The leagues get promoted for that here. So, your thoughts on was independence the right thing overall for RGV?
I want to start by saying that I have gotten multiple comments from people within the organization after the folding of RGV that, in fact, like for Cantu, the best scenario was at the beginning where where Alonso only had to cover the business expenses of marketing, the stadium, and not player or coaches salaries, technical staff or anything like that. So in answering that question, yeah, like for Cantu, if he would have started over again, he would not listen to the squeaky wheel and would have probably continued with some sort of a affiliation with another MLS team or maybe even a Liga MX team. We don't really know because the when the announcement of independence was announced, there was 1 year left of the relationship between Houston Dynamo and RGV. So that relationship was going to end. From that point on, we weren't going to be sure. Had independence not been announced early, we weren't sure exactly what was going to be the future. Would Alonso be forced to go independent? Would he try and find another team to have an affiliation with? Maybe Dallas, maybe Austin FC. Continue with the Houston Dynamo, although the relationship between the Dynamo and the Toros had gotten a bit sour. Yeah. So I do
feel wonder like if they wouldn't have had the pressure to go independent, if it would have soured.
Well, to be fair, though, there was a lot of pushback, not just from the Houston Dynamo, but I think also within a lot of Dynamo fans and media, including Glenn, that they were pushing for what they have right now, Houston Dynamo FC 2 in the Houston area, and not have them travel all the way to the Rio Grande Valley to get some minutes. So I think with MLS Pro coming in, their priority for an affiliation had diminished to almost zero. So they saw no need to keep RGV within their fold, because they were already going to do Houston Dynamo 2 in South Houston, at Houston Sports Park. So honestly, like I said, from a business aspect, it was very, very good for Alonso to have that hybrid affiliation. The problem is that the people here in the Rio Grande Valley, that's one of the biggest concerns that the Toros have always had, was that the people in the Rio Grande Valley, they want, not only do they want competitive teams, but they want, like, if Division 1, the higher the division, the better, right? They're, for the most part, they don't really believe in support local no matter what. Unlike here in the rest of the United States, where it tends to be a lot more of like, I'm going to support my local team if it's D3 or amateur, I'm going to support them because they represent my region, my town, or anything like that. The problem is that because of the Houston Dynamo affiliation, there really was no connection with the people of the Rio Grande Valley, because the team itself only basically their identity was not very RGV-esque. It was, obviously you could tell, like, even the crest was a kind of like it followed the same design language as the old Houston Dynamo logo, right? The players, obviously, a lot of people were complaining, including other media members who had a feud with me, would always say like, oh, this team needs to be built solely with players from the Rio Grande Valley. That's why the stadium is always so empty, which I completely disagree, but that's neither here nor there. But they had an identity problem, and I really do feel had the Alonso Cantu drop down to D3 or movement to MLS Next Pro, you would have had even more of an issue with people not going, because it's like, oh, we just demoted ourselves to D3. We've got a bunch of young kids, and it's like, we're not going to be competitive. We're not fighting for, a professional championship. Why should I go? I already have my America, I already have my Tigres, I already have my Rayados, you name it. And it's like, I feel like the attendance would have suffered even more. And I think at the end of the day, like it still would have led to the same destination, which was
Same destination.
the team folding, at least in my opinion.
So to me, RGV gets its independence. A lot of celebrations. I think they did an excellent thing at the start by bringing in Ron Patel to kind of run things. He was hired February of 2020. Unfortunately, it was a COVID year, his first year.
And I know that Ron Patel, and the reason I know this is because he himself, came to me, invited me over to Bird Ogden Arena, and had a one-on-one conversation with me, asked me about independence, my thoughts of independence, and there I did tell him, I wasn't like, oh yes, independence, do it, and I was like, okay, I like independence.
I was.
And I was like, I like independence, but these are just like I told my guys and down in the valley when I every time I talked about we need independence, I always tell them, take into consideration that if independence were to happen, now Alonso Cantu is going to have all this additional expenses, almost like overnight. And I told the same thing to Ron Patel. I want independence. I feel like the fans would love that idea, but there's the added expense that I think Alonso Cantu, if he does go with it, is going to have to figure out how to deal with it and stuff like that. So he did. So it was something that he asked, the more loyal fans of RGVFC, kind of get some feedback on that. I think he asked about the crest as well and the identity, like I mentioned to you. And in the end, they decided, okay, we're gonna fight for independence for the Toros. And I remember that day because it was actually my dad's birthday, December 23rd, when they made it public. I was actually on my way to San Antonio from Houston when he calls me. Ron Patel calls me. He's like, "Hey, in a couple of minutes, you're gonna have an announcement that you're gonna love." And a couple 5 minutes later, the announcement comes up of independence. I'm like, "Oh my god, yes! Like finally." And like you mentioned, you were coming off of a terrible COVID season, where I believe we ended up like second to the last in our group or something
13th,
like that.
yeah. You only had 2 wins, 3 draws, and 9 losses. And
it was
probably, to me, that or the second year where you guys went 9-8-15, and we'll kind of get this a little bit later. But to me, so the first year of COVID, I know in just my brief discussions with you and with Mr. Patel, there were a lot of ideas for that COVID year that got shelved. In 2021, semi post COVID, the final did get Open Cup, and there was still COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
But you could see the fruit, where RGV finished 4th, went to the conference semifinals, beat Phoenix, lost to San Antonio in the semis. 2022, another successful, Ron Patel leaves mid-season or early season, I guess, because it was May, right after the season start, due to the family issues, wanted to get back to New Mexico, and he's done a great job. And he was recently promoted with New Mexico United, so congratulations to Ron through there. But you could see the independence, and part of it, I think what hurt RGV is the timing of it. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened in 2020 if it wasn't a COVID year, and if that would have made a difference or not.
Yeah. So from what I had heard, regarding 2020, is that they were building this roster with the idea that the Houston Dynamo were going to be loaning a lot of their players from the academy, from French first team players, and bolster that USL roster with those on a game by game loan basis. Right? COVID comes along. MLS says we will not allow teams to loan players to USL affiliates, especially if they have to travel. So basically, the Toros had built, or the Houston Dynamo had built the Toros a roster with a lot of I don't want to say it, roster fillers. A lot. They had to play the whole season with roster fillers, So, and then you had at the end where there was an outbreak apparently within the league. Even within the Toros, there were supposedly some cases. Why that is why I think they canceled maybe like 2 games, if I'm not mistaken, in that year at the very end. Because of that, and so then you have 2021 coming in. You build a really, really good roster. You bring in Tyler Derrick, you bring in Juan David Cabezas, you bring in Eric Pimentel, you bring in Vicente Sanchez, you take him out of retirement, you bring him in, a legend with Toluca in Liga MX, and you were like, how did we do this? And it's like, it was a dream come true for a lot of people, like how we were able to get Vicente Sanchez, how we were able to get Rodrigo Lopez, a tried and true USL Championship veteran from Sacramento Republic. And it's like, I think we're building something good here, because it was like, one of the things that I've argued is like, it's harder to bring in these USL veteran players to the Rio Grande Valley because it's not a big city, right? No. So the fact that they were bringing Rodrigo, Juan David Cabezas, Tyler Derrick, it was like, man, like we've got something good here. It was reflected in the standings. We made it, deeper in the playoffs than in 2016. The problem is that as the years went by, the roster started getting thinner and thinner and thinner, to the point that we get to this past season. And yes, you kept 12 players from that last year's roster to this, to 2023. But everybody else were players from 3rd, 4th division. Thankfully, players like Ricky Reese, Jonathan Ricketts were able to kind of like prove that they were at the USL Championship level. Juan Galindres, unfortunately, with visa issues, had to come in late into the season, but that was a player that I was really eager to see how he would reconnect with Ricky and with Jonathan Ricketts. You have Wilmer Cabrera Jr. having a stellar year, shutting me up, and then all of a sudden, he's moving to the 5th division in Germany. And we're like, what the hell? I remember Shadow was like, how is he going from 2nd division in the United States to 5th division? He said it was like kind of semi-pro level in Germany.
But I told you that was a warning shot. I told you that was a sign.
You did. You and Shadow both insinuated that was kind of sketchy, and that probably meant that maybe Wilmer was planning to leave. I do remember that.
Just because you don't go, because RGV was still in the hunt. From my understanding, they didn't really get a whole lot from him, although it wasn't disclosed. But it wasn't a move up.
Well, they didn't, because it was a loan. He was loaned from Real Cartagena. Yeah. So Real Cartagena recalls Wilmer Cabrera Jr., and then they loan him to the 5th division in Germany.
Which doesn't make sense. It did not make sense outside of, to me, and I'll say this, I don't know Wilmer, and I'm a San Antonio guy, and him and Coach Marcina, aren't exchanging Christmas cards anytime soon. To me, I think it was a sign that he saw what was coming, and he's like, look, you need to get out of here, go to Europe, get some time over there. And I'm not sure where he's playing at this point, but
he's still over there in Germany. So before you get to that, because you mentioned right now that Wilmer kind of, maybe he felt like something was in the water. I can assure you that yes. I
know he did.
Apparently the Toros were making his life his life terrible. Yeah, in that season. Like they were wanting for him to. So here's the thing, guys. When Wilmer was hired, he was asking for a lot of money, like a lot of money in salary. So the only way that they could justify his salary was to give him both the head coach and the sporting director positions in order to justify the salary that Wilmer was asking for. So when you've got this situation where Alonso Catu is losing money, and your biggest expense is Wilmer's, or one of your biggest expenses is Wilmer's salary, they were going to try to get him to, I don't know, just quit or something like that. That's what I had heard, I don't know exactly how true that is, but it just makes a lot of sense, going into what you're saying, that maybe there was something like, you know what, I'm tired, I'm going to be out of here, Wilmer, son, just try to find someplace else before you end up, with nothing in your hands, kind of thing. And so then all of a sudden, so leading at the end of those seasons, it was like, man, one of the things that worried with, and I know Mike from the Stampede had mentioned, and the guys from the Stampede had mentioned a lot, and other audience members from down in the Valley, man, they've never announced anything about 2024 season tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody said anything about renewals. Nobody has said anything about, we'll see you in 2024 kind of thing. It was, what the hell is going on kind of thing.
So I'm going to go, and I know I told you this, and if you follow me either on here, and I think I've said it probably on Down in the Valley, the last San Antonio RGV match was on a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that many of us that went down there. Let's be honest, maybe 20, 25 San Antonio fans, maybe 30-ish traveled down. Outside of family, outside of the Stampede, I don't know if there were that many people from RGV there.
No.
And I remember talking to, the guys, from the Stampede, and they're great guys, and I feel really bad for them, but I was there the last time that as San Antonio played Austin Bold, even, after it was already announced, that, hey, the Bold weren't coming back, and San Antonio traveled up for, for a late season match. And it was just that eerie feeling of just, it was a dead environment. The workers were doing, the game day experience just didn't have that buzz.
It's like they were just going through the motions.
It was. And I think it affected the game, because I think it was a 0-0 draw.
0-0, and both teams had talked a lot during the week about, we don't, like, I know Jonathan Ricketts, who I still, stand by what he was talking about, where he said, like, oh, we win Copa Texas, whatever kind of thing. Our focus is to make it into the playoffs, kind of. And then San Antonio got salty, and they started, I think Alan Morcina was asked, and he's like, right, no, we care a lot about Copa Texas, so like trying to look good in front of Copa Texas and everything, all to end into a pretty bland 0-0 draw.
But there was just no, I don't remember if you were there or not, because I know you were working quite a bit at that time and long hours. But it was just, you could just tell something was off. It just did not feel through here. And this is where I'm going to transition to RGV finally being forced to say that they weren't coming back, because we'd heard rumors. The guys from the Stampede had put out stuff saying, hey, we're not coming back. Players aren't being advised of the situation. Wilmer, and in Shadow's the one that Shadow and Ray was the ones that kind of did this with, Wilmer's last press conference was kind of like, hey, I'm out of here. See ya. But not really saying officially that he was out.
Yeah, so I remember because, hey, what's up, Costless? He says, in Ferruzzi we trust. By the way, treat him well, guys. I know he's now in the San Antonio FC boat, so treat Costless well. But where I was going at, I remember because that last game, like I mentioned before, I was kind of very fed up with how the season that, that same day, Pigskin was happening in FAR. And so I decided I'm not going to go to the game, for the same thing. I'm just going to go have fun and, go and watch some high school marching band. Cause I former marching band member in high school, and me and my sister, we both love, marching bands. So it was like, we had never gone in the last couple of years since we graduated. I felt like this is the time. So we went to P. And I remember Ray calls me and told me that, like, hey, like, Wilmer pretty much said his goodbyes without saying his goodbyes. I told him, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, like he started, thanking, the media for everything and this and that. Like he said, it almost looked like he was saying goodbye. Like, and I was like, oh snap. Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, I'm being 100% serious. There were rumors. I know there was somebody in the next couple of weeks that would try to hijack the Down in the Valley YouTube chat, saying that, Wilmer had mentioned to his players that he wasn't coming back. He said apparently this guy talked to two players from the Toros that told him, yeah, Wilmer pretty much said, yeah, that he wasn't going to be coming back. Causeless is the PA says, see you next year at the end of the Loudon United game. So like nobody knew that was the thing about like the team itself. Wilmer said he probably arguably told the players he wasn't going to be coming back, but there was no mention from the organization about the future about of the organization ever.
But I think Cantu knew, and like, so I don't know the guy, and this is why I say how it ended is the ugly part of RGV. This is what they put out. A conclusive decision was reached to cease all operations after 8 years of professional soccer competition in the United Soccer League. Naturally, decision of this caliber carefully considered and are extremely difficult to make as they affect multiple individuals, both internally and externally, stated Golden Grape Entertainment President Hondo Candelaria. To the fans, we are eternally grateful for your support each and every step of the way. Throughout the seasons, our staff and players pridefully work tirelessly to provide quality soccer, entertainment, service while collecting countless memories in the process. We sincerely thank you, and for one final time, go Toros.
Okay, so why then, if you care so much about the fans, why did you ghost us from the end of the season to December 18th when you were forced to make this announcement because the league needed to make the announcement of the schedule? Why did you wait until the exact same time that schedule was announced to just put on social media, oh yeah, we're ceasing operations. So you know what? Screw you all. Like you sound like her. Screw you guys. I'm out of here. Like really? Like is that caring for the fans? Like don't give me this word salad of saying, oh, we cared about you. That's why we took this hard decision. It was hard for us. I know it's hard for y'all. BS. You never cared about the fans and how you handled this situation. I'm sorry if I'm going to offend a lot of people that worked in this. I don't care. I've gotten on the wrong side of FO members in the past for trying to just give an opinion of saying this isn't being done right. And that was the worst part, Harry. That was the worst part about this front office. They were too prideful to accept when somebody external said that they were doing something wrong in favor of the fans. They never accepted it. I can tell you minimum 2 times where I have said something in the podcast, like let's say, for example, 2021 or 2022, when they revealed the jerseys. They revealed it in front of sponsors, not
Correct.
fans,
Not in front of the
not season ticket members. I say on the podcast that is not right. Travis Watkins, I know you're the new chief financial officer, or CFO, but this isn't right. Your fan base is dwindling, attendance is dwindling, and instead of taking steps to attract the fans, to attract potential season ticket buyers, you cater to the big money. And at the end of the day, what's going to bring in other sponsors? How many fans are at the stadium? Well, guess what? I found out he got really, really mad and pretty much said, "Who the hell does this guy think he is to tell me what what is right and what is wrong?" And that had happened multiple times. And you know what? I don't care if I'm saying this. The team doesn't exist anymore. And all of these mistakes led up to this. And now you want to say, "Oh, we cared about you, the fans." No, get out of here. You never cared about the fans in this situation. You kept us dry. You kept us pretty much ghosted. Never knew what was going to happen. You kept the players ghosted as well.
That's the issue to me, is the treatment of the players. Is because the end of the season ended November 30th, if memory serves me
correct.
If you knew at that time if you were coming back or not coming back. And I'm sorry, you can't tell me you didn't know. And the reason why I know that, number one, moving the coach's son. Number two, there was zero talk. You mentioned this early, season tickets of 2024, which, RGV historically is not the greatest on announcing the next year's stuff, but for season tickets they always announced, hey, at the end of the year, hey, get ready for the following year. For that year, this was the first year that in my memory that they didn't do it. But to me, it's the players, how they treated the players and the staff. From my understanding, the staff
Correct.
that worked for them, more importantly, is the other thing. And Matt, fan engagement is the most important thing. And I know I've talked to Edson, we've talked to you, San Antonio, Austin Bold, El Paso's obviously going through some things with it as well. Fan engagement at the USL level is something that our teams need to do better. But to me, it goes to the people that worked for the organization that all of a sudden found out, hey, I'm without a job. And number two, the players, because that puts the players behind the eight ball of trying to find a better position for 2024. I haven't checked to see how that went through. I think
the USLPA did make an announcement about it. Now the problem is a lot of these players, that still have not found a team, they're probably going to have to wait until later to be able to sign with a team. Apparently, for a lot of them, it's already too late to sign with a team. So because you didn't have the guts to be upfront with your players and say, "We're not coming back next season," in a timely manner, you know what? Okay, we're not coming back, because this is the problem. And I know that Kaylor Hodges from the USL show made a really good point about it in his rant a couple of weeks ago. I mean, you saw, I know you saw that episode, Harry. He said these players, as long as they're under contract, they cannot go out there and talk with other teams until the organization officially says, "We're folding." You're still under contract and you cannot be talking with anybody else. So from November 30th, you spent a month and a half after players become free agents to announce you're folding. That is a dickhead move. I'm sorry for the but that was a dickheaded move by the organization to screw these players out of continuing their career at another place. Never gave them. I told Jonathan Ricketts, man, I'm glad that Sacramento got you, because now you were in a serious organization that is going to treat you fairly and is going to treat you with respect, unlike RGV.
yeah, it just to me, how RGV folded is probably one of the worst ways you could do it.
They were cowards. Simple as
it's
that.
yeah, it's there's no other way to sugarcoat it. Is they had. I've been around the game long enough. Here in San Antonio, we saw the Scorpions fold, and then SAFC came, and that was kind of a fold buyout merger, a whole type of thing. But you kind of knew Gordon Hartman after he won the title in 2014. He cashed out to San Antonio FC in 2015. Sucked because they were real bad. They went low budget, and then San Antonio FC came on. There's a right way to fold a team. Reno, announced it early.
San
Their owners,
Diego.
San Diego, announced it way early.
And
Austin Bold.
and you know what, Harry? When San Diego folded, and I mentioned it on Down in the Valley as well, their president or their CEO
The owner.
the owner went on camera and explained the situation to the fans and said, you know what, despite this, we are going to fold, but we're going to make this season the best that we can possible to go out with a bang. Alonso Cantu, nor his daughters, or anybody for that matter, not even Hondo, anybody in front office, nobody showed their face to the fans, explained the situation at a timely manner, instead of, oh, well, let's hope that everything kind of goes under the bus, make that the media never talks about this, and we just kind of like disappear without a trace.
Though, right? They
No,
put out the announcement, but
because they put out the announcement and they're like, we will not be taking any additional questions by the media.
And we know that UTRGV is going to be putting a football team in the stadium for their hair, which there's
which apparently has already been sold to the city of Edinburgh.
Yeah. So to me, the reason why this was a bad look is San Diego. You had MLS coming. Could they have played this year? Yes, but the ownership gave a valid reason of, hey, the cost of a stadium. We all understand that. If RGV would have came and said, hey, we're going to take a year off, we're going to look at maybe dropping down like North Carolina, Richmond, going to D3, whether, because MLS Next Pro has independent teams now. You've got Chattanooga FC, you're going to have Jacksonville Armada, you're going to have some independent teams that are lower budget, lower risk. If you wanted to stay in the USL family, you could have went to USL League One with Tech-Oma coming in. There were options, or sell the rights to the team. They didn't even open up that opportunity. Now, you can question whether you can really sell the rights because allegedly the Bold ownership sold it to was it
Fort Worth?
Fort Worth, but that seemed to have just gone up in thin air as well. So, but to me, how they did it, it was an ugly way to end the franchise that, in my opinion, has potential. It has potential to be there. They've shown that that they'll support the team. When they have a quality team, they come out and support it. The fan base is passionate. Like I said, as a San Antonio FC fan, you and I have gone back and forth. Stampede. I still remember seeing the Stampede and Bear County Casuals / Mission City / FTC. Kind of all going back and forth. In the first tailgate of the first game there at the UTRGV soccer stadium, it was a great time. It was awesome, and each side had fans that didn't make it the entire game because they got removed for certain aspects, and so. But that was the fun part of the rivalry, and for me, it's a shame. I know we're kind of putting RGV to bed. Could you see another team coming into the Rio Grande Valley at this point here? They won't own HEB Park, but I think you could still rent it out to a team. or do you think that
I mean,
that dream is gone?
technically there is a team in Brownsville, FC Brownsville.
Mhm.
Are they a serious organization? Man, I've heard from Ray it's kind of wishy-washy. I think
Yeah.
they've gone through so many identity changes. Apparently, this last identity change that they did before they returned to being the Explorers, they kind of copied Barcelona's crest, and they were forced to change it. Yeah, I want to. There's no proof, but I'm thinking that maybe like Barcelona got involved and is like, hey, you're gonna have to change your crest. I don't know exactly what happened, but uh in comparison, I mean, it's like Brownsville is so far out there in the Rio Grande Valley. It's like an hour and a half away from McAllen. Um, Whereas
Yeah, I'm
Edinburgh
not
is
talking
very
about
central.
Brownsville. I'm more
Yeah.
talking.
But as far as here in the central Rio Grande Valley, man, I don't think so. I really do think that if Alonso couldn't do it, like I said, richest man in the RGV, who else is gonna have the funds to be able to create a competitive team on a long-term basis for the Rio Grande Valley? I don't see anybody.
Unless you win the lottery.
Yeah, a lot of us have been saying that if we win the Powerball,
Uh,
but
I've always wondered, and it's something that we've talked about here, is because what the Liga MX teams close to you guys
Tigres Enrayados.
is if they wanted to get involved and put like a kind of a hybrid type team, but obviously it wouldn't be hybrid like the Dynamo. That would be an interesting way to be able to, number one, bring fans of Liga MX into it, because they could play under a similar, kind of like Chivas USA at the time.
Mhm.
But I think at a D2 D3 level, I think that's a lot easier to be able to do. And you could, let's be honest, the the reserve teams in Liga MX have some talented players that could play at this level. Or to me, if Corpus does make the move up, at a let's say a USL D3 level, I think to me that would be a way that I think it could happen. But
So there was a little bit of hope. I'm not gonna lie for myself when Tigres had their preseason here at HB Park. There was pictures where you would have Alonso Cantu like speaking with the Tigres coach, with the president of Club Tigres, who is Mauricio Denner. And my hope was like, man, like I really do hope like there's some sort of, I mean, because I think Alonso still owns the USL rights of the team,
hasn't sold them, yeah.
and honestly, like Tigres is really looking to expand their market reach to the United States. They've made, since starting last season, they've made a huge push to attract the Tigres Tejanos, so like the Tigres fans here in Texas. I know they do have some sort of marketing alliance with the Houston Texans, even though it's football, but they're trying to enter the Texas market because there's so many people from Monterrey here in Texas, and there's a lot of young players, there's a lot of talent here in Texas that they're trying to tap and expand their reach, not just in Nuevo León and northern Mexico, but also within the United States, to tackle on teams like Pumas, America, Chivas, you name it. And I really think that one, like me and my friend were talking about that, is like, I think it just makes so much sense that with the Rio Grande Valley, with how close it is between Monterrey and the Rio Grande Valley, it just makes perfect sense that if you want to expand into Texas, your gateway is the Rio Grande Valley. There's so many people from Monterrey living here. There's so many Tigres fans living here in the Rio Grande Valley. You bring some of these players, you bring every year you play a scrimmage with the Tigres first team. You bring in Guignac, you bring in Nahuel, to one preseason game here. you're going to have a lot of fans that are going to want to support this team, this team. And if you brand it correctly and you have it, despite it being Tigres brand or Tigres identity, but have it like some sort of root or some sort of connection with the community of the Rio Grande Valley, I'm sure it could be a huge success with the backing from Cemex, an international company, like they're like one of the top cement makers in the world.
Right.
With that kind of financial backing, you can really build a competitive team here. You can have a more serious project. But the question is, is Cantu willing to give it up? Is even Tigres, was that even in their plans or anything like that? So the potential is there, but I just don't see it happening.
Right.
If you want me to be honest.
But I will kind of circle back to something that you said earlier. You said, and I asked you this kind of, for the Dynamo Cantu relationship. You mentioned that I think he likes the business side, the marketing side, and obviously there's things that he needs to improve on that. But if you had somebody that came in on the technical side and kind of ran that side, covered the expenses, which obviously Tigres or a partnership could do, that might be a win-win. And let's be honest, to me that would be something that I think would excel. And I think you could see that expand out. Just, I know you follow MLS. I do think that the MLS, Liga MX affiliations, you're starting to see lines kind of get blurred a little bit more.
Rayados just recently announced an alliance with North Carolina FC in both the men and the women's.
So I think, to me, it's something that if somebody wanted to take the chance on, I personally think RGV is a good market, and if it was marketed right, as we saw, they had 7,000 fans. I think it was closer to 5, but we won't argue with numbers, but still 5,000 fans at a game. I think it's doable, and like I said, I don't think we saw RGV ever at its full potential. I think it was always a franchise that was ran with one arm tied behind its back. And I hate to say that, but I think both under the Dynamo, I don't think you got the full way to do it. And I think the Dynamo learned some lessons, and I think Dino Dos is seeing the benefits of that. And then I think, on the independent side, I think ownership, got into, hey, this is a little bit more. And to be fair to them, the cost of running a USL championship team now is a lot more than what it was in 2016, because the talent has grown quite a bit in that time frame. But
and of course now you also have the USLPA.
So, but Edson, thank you for coming on. Like I said here, this is the first show of Section 114 Sports. It's going to be something that we'll probably won't do regularly. I won't say it'll be weekly, maybe once a month, something along those lines, where if there's an interesting story out there, whether it's soccer or non-soccer, we might chop on it. I might see if I can get my friend from Spurs and Salsa to kind of talk about Spurs and Wemby and how that is going. Of course, since that's been a discussion here in San Antonio. But Edson, always a pleasure. Like I said here, I try to follow you on your iRacing adventures now, since down the valley. I think you'll be back, whether it's a Houston Dynamo or Houston Dash, because I know you also follow the Dash quite well. And let's be honest, the Dash could use some more coverage, especially podcast-wise, out there compared to because I think what the Dynamo's got, 5 or 6 podcasts now?
Yeah, minimum.
More here, or I think a couple of them do dab into there. And then I know MLS Matt, is a Dynamo fan, so you may be able to see him at a Dynamo home match since he has season tickets.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for coming on. Like I said here, Edson, any final words that you have for the fans of down in the valley, or RGV fans like Costless and Shadow and all the Stampede, before we let you get out of here?
Honestly, guys, I mean, I want to thank you all for 7-8 years of supporting down in the valley. The podcast couldn't have grown to as much as it did without all of your support. Harry, your support as well from San Antonio aspect. I know in the early stages of down in the valley, I mean,
It was fun going back and
it
forth.
was fun, but I was, it's like I told my dad, like I was able to make friends with some San Antonio fans. It's like that, like I earned their respect. I earned, their yeah, like they sometimes you would see them like commenting or even sharing some of the stuff regarding RGV, and that's really not very easy to do, especially with how much of a rivalry it was between RGV and San Antonio. And I want to thank the San Antonio fan base for that, because despite the fact that we were fierce enemies, on the pitch, the fact that y'all cared for the most part about, how RGV, the organization, was treating the fans, you know, it, I'm really, really, really grateful. I want to thank you all for everything. Unfortunately, one chapter closes and another chapter opens. But I want to wish you all the best of luck in this upcoming 2024 USL Championship season. And like I said, treat Costless Titan well.
If we don't win, he gets voted off, dude. I'm just throwing it out, Costless. If you bring that RGV stuff to us,
no, you need to be careful. No, you need to be careful if Shadow wants to come into the fold.
Well, no. I already banned Shadow. He asked. I was like, no, Shadow. You were with Oklahoma City, RGV. Go to Tulsa. Go to Tulsa or wherever that you ended up with. But,
I wish I know what I'm gonna say is probably gonna get a lot of RGV fans kind of mad, but I wish you all the best in the 2024 season. I think I'm just gonna be a free agent in the USL Championship for the time being. I told them, I said originally after what happened, I said, oh, I'm not, like, if the RGV, the organization, didn't care, why should I care? If I go to another and support another team, but it's hard to do that after being with this, supporter of the Toros for so long. Just kind of like the body still hasn't cooled down, and I've changed my affiliation to another team. It's kind of seems off, but we'll see what happens. But I'm looking forward to the coverage that you, Harry, are going to bring to San Antonio this coming season.
We will try, but thank you, Edson. Like I said here, thank you for everybody turned in on the initial Section 114 sports. Like I said here, I thought it was a good show. The bad would be me, and the ugly would have been how RGV folded. So, hope everybody has a wonderful day. I believe Thursday is going to be the next show for the SA Soccer Roundtable with the high school. And the Crocketeers have their annual meeting on the 18th, which is Sunday, which is when we normally do the SAFC fan cast. We may try to do it earlier, but it's also Daytona 500, although I might be the only one that's into the Daytona 500. But to be determined on the fan cast. But on Thursday, Rafa and I will be back to go over his power rankings when it comes to that. But thank you, Edson. Thank you for everybody tuning in. Thank you, Matt Costless, for making comments. And like I said here, please like and subscribe, and hope everybody has a wonderful